Hey guys, tonight we'll sit together by the small campfire where the red sparks flicker across your face and the crackling of the wood echoes into the darkness. The air feels heavier, a chill creeping down your neck as if the forest out there is whispering ancient stories you've never heard before. You're not even sure you'll survive this journey, but that's exactly what makes it exciting. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. And don't forget to leave your location and local time in the comments below. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan to create a soft background sound, and let's begin tonight. You walk slowly across the dry ground where moonlight slips through the gaps in the leaves, shining down onto a large rock. This rock is not ordinary. It has deep cracks, and if you look closely, you'll see they curve into the shape of claws. Your heart beats faster, while your fellow tribespeople crowd around, pressing in close, whispering like a hive of bees bursting open. Someone gasps. That definitely isn't a bear's mark. Look how big it is. A child's mouth hangs open, eyes wide, while an old woman trembles as she reaches out to touch the edge of the crack, then jerks her hand back as if burned. A chill spreads through you as you imagine something stamping this mark into stone thousands of years ago. Suddenly an owl hoots in the distance, startling everyone, a few breaking into nervous laughter to push away the fear. Someone blurts out, "What if it's still out here?" The words tighten the air, everyone swallowing hard, eyes darting into the darkness as though waiting for a monster to emerge. In that moment you remember the stories passed down from earlier generations. The elders spoke of giant beasts that once roamed the earth, their steps shaking the ground, their breath tearing through forests. Historians still debate whether prehistoric humans truly recognized the existence of creatures long extinct, or if they simply stumbled across fossils and invented stories to fill the gaps of their imagination. But standing before this cracked stone, your imagination no longer feels like a game, it feels tangible. One brave soul in the group strikes the rock hard with a stick, the echo rolling through the forest like a warning. Someone bursts out laughing, imagining they've just awakened a sleeping beast. A child imitates a roar, making the group laugh nervously. But the echo lingers, stretching on as if something below the earth is answering, freezing the smiles on everyone's faces. A thick, earthy smell rises, and you feel as if you're standing on the back of a giant creature, buried only by time's dust. The night wind whistles, making your hair stand on end. In your mind you picture a beast tall as a tree skin, as hard as stone, eyes glowing as they bore into you. You know it isn't real, but for a few seconds the vision is more vivid than any tiger or elephant you've ever seen. Someone grips your hand tightly, whispering with a shiver, "If it wakes up, where will we run?" The question squeezes your chest before you suddenly burst out laughing, because clearly if such a monster existed, running would do no good. The whole group laughs along, the sound blending with the wind, forming a strange chorus of fear and joy. It is a rare moment, fragile humans, but with imaginations powerful enough to turn stone into living beasts. In the firelight, the crack in the rock looks as if it's widening, like an eye squinting open. You close your eyes, inhale deeply, trying to reassure yourself it's only a trick of the light. But when you open them again, the whole tribe is still staring at the rock, no one moving away as if waiting for something to happen. You realize this fear is not solitary. It is shared, amplified, turned into a collective story. And that is how legends are born. You think to yourself, maybe thousands of years from now, people will still argue, was this just stone or evidence of a gigantic creature's presence? Whatever the truth, this moment is etched deep into your tribe's memory. The story of this strange crack will live on the seed of the very first idea of terrifying creatures called dinosaurs. You walk slowly through the dense forest after a nighttime rain. The ground is damp beneath your feet, puddles shimmering in the moonlight. When you glance down, something strange catches your eye, a gigantic footprint pressed deep into the dried mud. It is 4 times larger than your foot, the cracks within the sole still visible. You gasp, calling your tribespeople. Soon everyone crowds around, forming a circle, some with mouths agape, others laughing nervously to mask their fear. A young boy crouches down, placing his foot inside the print, and it sinks in like a pebble in a massive basket. Murmurs spread through the group. Someone whispers, "It can't be an elephant. Elephants don't leave prints like this." An old man declares, "Only a monster from ancient times could have feet like this." His words thicken the air, everyone exchanging glances of doubt and terror. You close your eyes, trying to imagine the creature that made this print. In your mind, a giant beast takes shape. towering high, skin thick as rock, breath blazing hot, each step shaking the ground. You open your eyes and see the whole tribe sharing the same vision. Words aren't needed. One footprint has already ignited fear and wonder. A child suddenly shouts, "It's coming!" and everyone jumps, but it's only a nightbird taking flight wings, flapping wildly. Nervous laughter bursts out, mixed with relief. Someone uses a branch to measure the footprint's length, then solemnly declares, "It's longer than two people's arms put together." Gasps follow instantly, the group stepping back as if the monster might appear from the shadows at any moment. You kneel down, running your hand across the footprint's surface. The earth is dry and firm, yet you feel a phantom warmth, an illusion that sets your blood racing. A friend sighs beside you. "If it comes back, do we have anywhere to hide?" The unanswered question hangs heavy in the air, silencing everyone. In that silence, you realize a truth. Collective imagination is stronger than any beast you've ever faced. It fuels fear, transforming a quiet footprint into a living warning. Historians still argue whether prehistoric people truly connected fossils to monsters, or simply feared anything larger than life. But in this moment, you don't need a scholar. You believe with your own eyes that this footprint belongs to a creature no one has ever seen. One bold man steps into the center of the footprint, spreading his arms, laughing, "I am the monster." The group bursts out laughing for a moment, but it quickly dies when the moon slips behind a cloud. Darkness swallows the clearing, leaving only the massive footprint visible in the dim light. A woman clutches her child tightly, whispering, "Don't joke, it can hear you." You glance upward as the dark clouds drift quickly past and moonlight floods the clearing once again. The footprint now looks like a doorway into another world where giant beasts still roam. You shiver but also feel a strange thrill, as though you're touching a secret known only to the universe. The tribe begins to retreat, some stacking stones in a circle around the footprint, as if to protect it, or to lock the beast beneath the ground. You linger, staring at it. For a moment you see the image of a creature, tall as a mountain neck, long eyes shining like stars. The vision fades like a dream, leaving you with a deep sense of awe. You know that after tonight, this footprint will become a story retold around the fire. The elders will embellish details, the children will exaggerate the fear, and over time it will become legend. A single mark, powerful enough to engrave itself into a community's memory, perhaps planting the very first seed of the idea of dinosaurs. You climb a steep rocky slope, sweat beading on your forehead as the sun's heat still lingers in every crack of earth. The crunch of your footsteps is suddenly broken by a harsh sound. A chunk of soil slides away, revealing a sight that steals your breath. Before you, long ivory bones curve upward, like towering pillars scattered in a heap. A portion of a massive ribcage lies exposed, twisted like the skeleton of a monster that has slept for millennia. The group gathers, no one daring to touch first. Their eyes glow with curiosity, yet are darkened with fear. A child screams, "It's the monster," it's still here, and buries themselves into their mother's arms. The adults exchange tense looks, lips pressed tight, laughter absent this time. The air feels heavy, every breath pressed against the presence of these bones. You step closer. Your trembling hand touches one of the curved bones. A chill shoots through your skin, your heart racing. You feel as if you're touching living history, proof that something once existed far beyond imagination. Whispers rise behind you. Some say it is the skeleton of a buried giant god. Others claim it's a monster struck down by lightning. You crouch low, gazing across the skeleton, and realize its size is beyond comprehension. Too large to be an elephant, too long to be a bear, too solid to be anything you know. For a moment you imagine the creature rising, stretching its neck skyward, its head brushing the treetops. The vision is so vivid it makes you stumble backward. An old man with ragged white hair kneels before the bones. He plants a stick into the earth, muttering prayers. Others follow, tossing stones and branches around the skeleton as though offering tribute to a great spirit. Someone breaks down in tears, believing they stand before the tomb of a god. You see clearly faith and fear are blending, transforming the skeleton into an instant sacred sight. Some are entranced, others trembling, but no one can look away. Historians still argue whether ancient people, upon discovering dinosaur bones, understood them as natural remains or instantly wove them into mythology. Whatever the case in this moment, imagination is stronger than fact. The wind whistles through the mountain pass, echoing with a long howl like a roar from the past. A young man shouts into the canyon to test the echo, and sure enough the sound returns like the beast is answering. The group falls silent, eyes wide. Then laughter bursts out, but it is twisted, strained laughter that masks the fear clawing underneath. Looking closer, you notice small cracks near the skull shaped like jagged teeth. Were they once part of the beast's jaws, or just stone weathered by time? You can't be certain. But your mind draws a mouthful of sharp teeth wide enough to swallow a person whole in an instant. You shake your head to clear the vision, but it clings to your mind like a ghost. A brave child presses their ear to a bone, then screams. It's still breathing. Panic spreads for a moment, some stumbling back, others clutching one another. When everyone realizes it's just a prank, they feel both angry and relieved. Yet from that joke, the sense that the monster never truly vanished only grows stronger. You sit beside the skeleton torchlight, casting long, twisting shadows along the rock face. In the flickering light, the bones seem to shift, as though the giant skeleton is merely sleeping, not dead. You shiver, but also feel a strange thrill. Perhaps you've just witnessed proof that this world once held magnificent creatures beyond human understanding. And from this moment on, you know the story will be retold, embroidered into legend, living forever in the community's imagination. Night falls, and once again the fire crackles at the center of the circle where people sit together. The smell of smoke weaves into hair and skin, and the popping of wood echoes all around. After the encounters with gigantic footprints and colossal bones, you realize everyone is no longer silent as before. Now the story of the beast has become nourishment for the spirit embroidered night after night around the fire. Each person has a detail to add, and when woven together, the monster grows more alive with every telling. A large man with a hoarse voice claims he once saw the creature's shadow gliding past the tree line in a dream. He describes it as tall as a hill, its sweeping tail knocking trees flat. A woman interrupts, insisting the beast could breathe fire, and the proof was last year's great forest fire. The children cheer, eyes sparkling as if they are hearing the tale of a supernatural hero. You watch in silence, sensing how collective imagination is shifting rapidly. Lifeless bones have now become the central character of a new legend. The elders nod along, adding that their ancestors once saw beasts flying in the sky, their wings blotting out entire valleys. No one objects. Everyone is eager to build this shared world. Historians still debate whether storytelling around the fire was one of humanity's earliest forms of culture, and whether it played a role in creating the image of giant monsters in collective memory. A child suddenly imitates a roar, and the group bursts into laughter. The sound echoes through the mountains, mingling with the howling wind. But the laughter doesn't last. For a sudden crack explodes from the forest. Everyone falls silent, only wide eyes gleaming in the dark. When a dry branch tumbles down, the group exhales in relief, laughing again at their own foolish fear. The oldest man raises his hand, calling for silence. His deep voice begins to tell how the monstrous beasts once hurled thunder and lightning upon the earth. He points toward the skeleton discovered earlier in the day, saying it is the body left behind when the gods punished the creature. Everyone listens in awe, carried along by his trembling yet authoritative tone. No proof is needed. His words become truth in their hearts. You suddenly realize that those fragments of bone are being stitched together into a tapestry of imagination, and from it a gigantic creature beyond reality is taking shape. For a moment you hear what sounds like a roar echoing from deep within the mountains, or perhaps only the wind rushing through stone. But no one dares confirm it, for everyone's eyes are wide as if they've touched a forbidden truth. A woman bursts into tears, sobbing that she dreamt the beast devoured her son. The group rushes to comfort her, but the nightmare only fuels the fire of imagination. Another person laughs dryly, claiming that if the monster were real, they would ride on its back and make it their companion. Laughter erupts again, echoing into the night, easing the tension for a moment. You gaze into the fire, watching sparks shoot into the sky, shifting shapes, sometimes like wings, sometimes like a sweeping tail. Imagination seems boundless, and what's strange is that everyone is feeding it, whether through fear, faith, or jokes. Then a song rises, soft, steady like a lullaby. A young woman sings of the giant beast walking among the clouds, carrying rain and fire. Others join in, their voices blending into a hymn of legend. You close your eyes, letting the melody seep into your mind, drawing forth strange yet powerful images. For a moment you no longer know what is real and what is dream. The skeleton may be only stone, or it may be the remains of a long-vanished beast. But in the firelight, in the stories, in the song, it has become part of the community's soul. And you understand tonight will be remembered as a milestone, the moment imagination first spun the threads of a great legend. You walk across the vast steppe where the wind drives waves of dry grass into the air. In the distance, a low hill rises, topped with stones arranged in long rows like ribs thrust into the earth. As you approach, you see they were not placed there by nature. Ancient hands dragged them here, setting them in line, as if rebuilding the body of some long-lost creature. The entire tribe gathers in silence to behold this strange construction. Children hide behind their parents in fear, while the elders clasp their hands in whispered prayer. A curious young man steps forward, tapping one of the stones. The sound reverberates like a drum from deep underground. Everyone shivers as if the soul of the beast below has been disturbed. A woman cries out that this must be the temple of the sacred beast built to remember humanity's encounter with giants. Someone protests, saying it's only a trick to frighten children. But the protest is drowned in the hushed reverence of the crowd. Historians still argue whether such ancient stone structures were built to honor giant creatures or simply for agricultural rituals. But standing before the stones lined up like ribs, it is hard to believe they are mere coincidence. You step closer, circling the stones. As your hand touches their rough surface, you feel as though you're brushing fossilized scales. The wind whistles through, creating a long, sighing sound, silencing the group. A bold boy presses his ear to a crack, and suddenly shouts, "I can hear its heartbeat." Everyone stares, then steps back in shock. No one else hears anything but the wind, yet no one dares deny it. A man suddenly kneels, drawing the entire group to kneel with him. From his pouch, he pulls a handful of dried seeds, scattering them into the air as an offering. The seeds fall against the stones, some lodging in the cracks. People believe that if the beast's spirit truly exists, it will accept the gift and protect them from harm. You watch as collective faith transforms these stones into a sacred symbol rising beyond reality. In the fading sunset, the stones cast long shadows across the steppe, stretching like skeletal remains over the land. Children cry in fear, while adults clutch them tighter, eyes still locked on the stones. A soft song rises from a woman, spreading until all voices join in chorus. They sing of the giant beast sleeping beneath the earth, its body turned to stone, yet its eyes still watching humankind. You sit down, closing your eyes, letting imagination lead you. In your mind, the beast stirs, the stones quiver and fuse into a living skeleton. It roars, thunder rolling across the plain. The vision is so vivid that you open your eyes wide, heart-pounding, sweat pouring, as if you just fled from a real monster. A strong wind sweeps across, filling the air with swirling dust. When it clears, the stones seem larger, more imposing than ever. You feel the tribe has transformed this place into an eternal monument, carving imagination into stone for future generations to build upon. You think to yourself, someday, when descendants discover these stones, they will argue over their true purpose. But for you standing here now, the answer is clear. This is proof of humanity's longing to explain the unknown, proof that people have never stopped dreaming of the existence of giants. Suddenly, a violent wind rises, black clouds rolling in, swallowing the light until only dim twilight cloaks the valley. You stand in the clearing with the others, eyes lifted toward the forming storm. The first thunderclap booms, echoing across the hills like a distant roar. Someone trembles, whispering that the beast's spirit is waking. The air thickens, gusts tearing through the trees like mournful breaths. A bolt of lightning rips across the sky, illuminating jagged stones jutting from the cliffs. For a moment, everyone imagines them as enormous teeth jaws opening to swallow the valley. Children cry, adults clutching them close, muttering desperate prayers. You raise your arm to shield your face, but the next flash reveals something stranger. The massive skeleton found days earlier glows silver white in the lightning. The curved bones blaze like heated iron. For a split second, you see the ribcage heave as if breathing. Cold sweat pours down your back. You know it's only a trick of light, but the fear is real, paralyzing. A man screams, his voice cracking, "It's back!" The entire group falls to their knees, covering their ears as though to block out the roar that seems to rise from the earth itself. You stand frozen as the first raindrops strike your face icy cold. The downpour thickens, thunder rolling like war drums. Everyone believes the giant beast is striding through the clouds, its footsteps falling as lightning. You recall the elders' words, storms are not mere natural events, but times when the sacred beast rises to sweep across the sky, testing humankind. Historians still debate whether linking storms with monsters began with the discovery of colossal fossils, or if it was simply humanity's way of explaining the fury of nature. But standing in the pounding rain, you see clearly how imagination dissolves the line between reality and myth. Another thunderclap explodes and a bolt of lightning strikes a nearby rock outcrop. Flames leap up, casting a writhing shadow across the sky. People scream, some collapsing in worship, others fleeing in panic. You stare transfixed by the shadow's shape, long neck, sweeping tailhead raised in a roar. The image carves itself into your mind so deeply that you cannot tell whether it is an illusion of light or a memory rising from the earth. A boy shrieks that he can see the beast's eyes glowing in the rain. You bend down to comfort him, though you're not certain you didn't glimpse the same thing. In the tangled flashes, you too catch sight of two red sparks glowing on the ridge. Only for a second, then gone, but enough to send your heart racing. The rain pours harder the ground beneath you, turning to mud, everyone drenched yet unwilling to leave. They remain as if entranced, staring into the storm-lit sky. Shouts of prayer mix with sobs, filling the night with chaos. You stand there, ears ringing from thunder, but your mind is sharp with one realization: this storm will be remembered forever. It will be told as proof passed down to later generations that they truly saw the giant beast stride out of the storm clouds. You lift your face, rain streaming down, blending with trembling tears inside. In the final flash before the storm fades, the sky splits open like torn fabric, and there, outlined in blazing light, is the full silhouette of the monster. It does not roar, it does not move, it only stares down at you in silence. Then darkness returns, leaving nothing but steady rainfall and endless night. You exhale deeply, walking slowly toward those still kneeling. They believe they have witnessed the gods themselves, while you know that imagination has burned brightest in this storm. And from now on, the idea of the giant beast is no longer just a tale around the fire. It has become a shared memory that cannot be erased. The storm had passed, but within the tribe its tremors still lingered. People looked at one another with fearful eyes, rumors spreading faster than the wind. Everyone believed that the gigantic skeleton on the mountainside was not merely stone, but a message from the gods. The following night, as the fire blazed again, a figure stepped into the center of the circle, the shaman of the tribe. He wore a robe covered in feathers, holding a bundle of leaves that smoked thickly, his eyes glowing in the firelight. Everyone bowed their heads as he began to speak. His voice rose and fell like one carrying the will of the heavens. He declared that those bones were not the remains of some dead beast, but what was left of a monster struck down by the thunder god. Its presence here was a reminder that humankind must obey the warnings of the divine, or else suffer the same fate. His words made the entire circle hold its breath. Children wept softly, adults clutching them tighter, eyes trembling. Some fell to the ground, kissing the earth as though begging forgiveness. You watched the scene filled with fear but also wonder. Once the skeleton had been only an incomprehensible relic. Now, through the shaman's voice, it had become a sacred symbol. Historians still debate whether figures like shamans transformed early archaeological finds into myth. But seeing it unfold before your eyes, you realize his words carry the power to turn stone into God. A young man dared to ask, if it truly was a monster, could it return? The shaman did not answer immediately. He thrust the smoking leaves into the fire, sending up a dense cloud. Then, tilting his face skyward, he spoke slowly. The spirit of the beast still lingers, and if humans show disrespect, it will awaken and swallow the entire valley. The young man bowed his head in terror, while the others murmured prayers. You quietly observed as a swirl of smoke rose, forming the faint outline of a long-necked beast. For a moment you couldn't tell if it was illusion or reality. Others cried out, some even fainting, adding to the mystery. A stone horn was blown, its moaning echo like a roar from the mountain's heart. You shivered, realizing that fear had now been elevated into sacred ritual. The shaman then demanded offerings be placed around the skeleton. People hurried to bring seeds, fruits, even precious dried meat. They laid them at the bone's base, believing the spirit would accept and protect them. You placed a smooth stone, half amused, half burdened by the weight of the act. The whole tribe raised their voices in a long chant, the sound rolling like crashing waves, making you feel as though you were standing inside a giant drum. In that moment, your mind conjured the beast itself, rising, roaring, and bending down to accept the gifts. You saw its glowing eyes, two embers burning deep, and shuddered so hard you wanted to run, but your legs would not move. Only when the chant faded and the smoke cleared did you realize you were still standing there. Looking at the faces around you, you saw belief etched into every gaze. To them, there was no doubt this was proof of the divine's presence. Someone whispered that if the beast was truly a messenger, then this land was sacred ground. Another murmured that it was a warning of great calamity to come. Rumors piled upon rumors, fanning the flames of collective imagination. You knew that after this night, the colossal skeleton would no longer be lifeless. It had been cloaked with meaning, transformed into the center of faith and fear. And you as a witness understood that the moment the shaman spoke, the imagined dinosaur had entered a new chapter where truth and fiction no longer had boundaries. At dawn the next morning, as the sun crested the mountains, the tribe emerged from their shelter. Golden light washed over the forest, glinting off the dew. You joined the hunters, venturing deeper into new lands where birds sang and the damp earth gave off its heavy scent. Yet within you and your companions, the haunting from the night before still clung tight. Each step pressed into the ground carried the thought that it might tremble at any moment, as though a giant beast slumbered beneath. The wind through the trees sounded like a predator's breath. The lead hunter halted, pointing ahead. On the soft earth were deep gouges, long claw marks. Not tiger, not bear too large, too sharp, as if carved by enormous talons. The group erupted in whispers. Someone trembled, declaring it proof the monster had returned. Another whispered it still roamed nearby. You crouched and pressed your palm into one of the grooves. Your hand fit easily inside, cold to the touch. A tall man gritted his teeth, vowing to follow the marks to see what creature made them. But protests broke out immediately, voices warning against chasing something beyond human control. You stood still, eyes tracing the claw marks slashing into the damp earth. In your mind rose a clear vision. A beast towering above the forest claws, sharp enough to shred an ancient tree, a single strike enough to crush all in its path. You shuddered, yet your imagination was drawn irresistibly to the vision. Historians still debate whether ancient humans truly encountered traces of prehistoric beasts, or whether their fears amplified cracks and strange patterns in stone. But standing here, you knew truth no longer mattered because belief itself was stronger. A young mother, tears streaming, said her child had cried all night after dreaming of a giant shadow lurking outside the cave. The group exchanged uneasy glances. Some argued they should leave immediately, migrating to safer lands. Others insisted these marks proved the place was sacred, that the beast watched over them. Voices clashed, rising louder and louder, until tension thickened the air. You stepped forward and pressed your ear to the ground. Nothing but your own pounding heartbeat, yet, for a fleeting moment, you thought you felt a slow thrum deep below. You jerked upright, eyes darting. No one could say for certain, but the silence that followed was enough to still the argument. An elder spoke, his voice steady. These claw marks were not threats, but warnings. The beast wanted mankind to know it existed, and still watched every step. At this, heads nodded, eyes brightening as though the explanation fit. You thought to yourself that perhaps imagination was the tribe's salvation, the thread that wove meaning into the unexplainable. Suddenly a noise burst from the forest. The group spun, weapons raised. A herd of deer leapt out, vanishing into the trees. The pounding of hooves jolted your heart, but soon everyone laughed in relief. The laughter echoed through the woods, mingled with lingering fear, becoming a release. You looked at the claw marks one last time. Sunlight now lit them harshly, the grooves standing out like colossal scars on the earth's skin. You knew that from this day on, these scratches would be retold as warnings for future generations. In collective memory, they were no longer mute marks, but proof that giant monsters had once existed. You left the forest, but the image clung to you. Every time you closed your eyes, you saw the beast's claws unfurling its gaze, piercing into you. And you understood sometimes imagination cuts sharper than the claws themselves. It leaves marks not just on earth, but forever within the mind. Following a narrow path, you entered a great cave. From outside, the darkness seemed to swallow the morning light. Damp, cold air flowed out, heavy with mold and earth. Torches were lit, their glow trembling against mottled walls. Every step deeper echoed, as if unseen footsteps followed behind. Then a cry rang out from ahead. A boy had found something on the cave wall. Everyone rushed, holding torches high. On the stone were black charcoal drawings. Huge creatures with long necks, arched backs, sweeping tails. Some with massive heads and sharp teeth, others with wings spread wide across the ceiling. You froze. They were not elephants, not bison. These were something entirely different. The child shouted. "These are the monsters from our dreams." Adults stared in silence, eyes filled with wonder and fear. An old woman whispered that the ancestors drew the creatures they once saw as warnings for their descendants. A man nodded firmly, insisting such drawings could not be mere imagination. They must have seen them firsthand. Historians still debate whether cave art depicted real ancestral memories or was inspired only by fossils. But in this moment, everyone believed the images were living proof. You brought the torch closer, seeing how rough yet powerful the strokes were. One beast was drawn with its mouth open, wide teeth like daggers, ready to swallow the viewer whole. You shuddered, imagining it moving right before your eyes. The flickering firelight made the image shift its shadow, stretching as if alive. Children screamed and clung to their mothers, while adults inhaled sharply, unable to look away. A young man pressed his hand on the wall, forcing a strained laugh, saying it was only idle drawing. But in that instant, the firelight threw the beast's shadow over him, covering him, as if devouring him whole. The crowd cried out, pulling him back in terror. Shaking, he dared not speak again. You realized then the drawings were not only marks, but seeds of collective fear. A cold gust swept from deeper in the cave, making torches sputter. In the smoke, the drawings seemed to quiver. You thought you heard a roar mingling with the wind, faint yet enough to pound your heart and soak your skin with sweat, despite the chill. An elder proclaimed that the beast's spirit dwelled within the paintings, and that erasing them would bring catastrophe. You pressed forward, reaching the largest mural. It showed tiny people standing before a giant beast. The contrast was stark, humans like grains of dust, the creature towering like a mountain. The crowd fell silent. Someone knelt muttering prayers. Another shouted that it was divine warning. The cries echoed, resonating like drums across the cavern. You sat down, studying every detail. Small circles flanked the beast like sun and moon. Perhaps the ancestors meant to show the creature was bound to the heavens, not just the earth. Your imagination ran, picturing the beast walking beneath the moon, its shadow covering valleys. The vision was beautiful, terrifying, filling you with the belief that once an age had existed where men lived alongside giants. When the group finally turned to leave, silence clung to them. Outside, bright sunlight poured down, yet in every mind the drawings lived on. You knew that from now on this cave would be sacred, the painting's immortal proof. No explanation was needed. Belief was enough. And in their hearts, the imagined beasts were no longer dreams, they had truly left their mark in human memory. Tonight, the fire crackles once more in the familiar circle. The wind sighs across the plain, carrying with it the scent of dry grass and damp earth. People huddle, close their eyes, gleaming in the darkness. No one wants silence anymore, for after seeing the cave paintings, everyone is eager to add to the tale. The storytelling begins, and once again the tribe's imagination soars beyond what their eyes have seen. A broad-shouldered man rises, his booming voice declaring that the monster he dreamed of had wings stretching across the entire sky. When it flapped them, the wind grew so fierce it snapped trees and swept people away. He raised his arms to illustrate his shadow cast on the rock wall, making the children gape. A woman chimed in, saying she had once heard the beast's roar in her dreams, a roar that shook the earth like an earthquake. The group fell silent, shuddering at the vivid image. You watch, realizing that each person is adding a piece to a shared picture. Scattered bones or claw marks in the dirt have now become a creature with a clear, defined form. Sometimes it is a beast of fire, sometimes a flying predator, sometimes a guardian of the heavens. Historians still debate whether such embellishments were how early humans transformed minor discoveries into full-blown legends. But you can see plainly that nights like these around the fire were the loom upon which collective imagination was woven. A young man laughed and said that if the beast were real, he would climb onto its back and ride it into the hunt. The group erupted in laughter, the crackling fire joining in. A child roared in imitation, sending the adults into louder fits of laughter. With their laughter, some of the day's fear evaporated, though the beast grew more familiar. Terrifying, yes, but also strangely exciting. Then an elder lifted his hand, calling for silence. His voice rose and fell as he told of a dream where the beast stood on a mountaintop, its body shining as though wrapped in moonlight. It did not attack, it only gazed down quietly at humankind below. Everyone listened with pounding hearts, feeling as if they were witnessing something sacred. Some eyes welled with tears, taking the dream as a reminder of human smallness. You realize that fear is no longer the only power in the tale. Alongside it now are reverence, even a strange comfort. The giant beast is no longer just a destroyer. It is also a symbol of strength, a figure capable of inspiring awe. The story is becoming richer, layered, no longer merely a warning. Outside, the wind howled across the plains, and the beat of a stone drum began. Someone struck the fossilized bone carried back from the mountains, its sound deep and resonant. The group joined in, chanting in rhythm. They mimicked the beast's footsteps, swaying to the drum beat, turning fear into play. The singing and dancing spread. Children giggled, adults shouted, the air crackling with life. You closed your eyes, imagination carrying you into a vision where the monster itself appeared within the circle. It did not roar, only tilted its head to watch the people singing and dancing at its feet. You shuddered but did not run. Instead, warmth spread through you. For a moment you believed humans and beast were sharing a single moment, transcending fear. When the song ended, the fire still burned, faces glowing in the night. No one spoke, but in every eye was the conviction that they had touched something beyond human understanding. And you knew that the firelit stories would continue to grow, passed from generation to generation, until they became immortal legend. The night stretched longer than usual, cold winds sweeping down from the valley. You lay close to the dwindling fire, eyelids heavy, but your mind still spinning from the tales. When sleep came, it dragged you into a strange world. In the dream, you were running across a desolate plain, the ground quaking beneath your feet, deafening booms sounding from afar. You looked back and your eyes widened in terror. A giant beast was chasing you, its body as long as a mountain, its tail smashing through forests, its teeth flashing like blades in the moonlight. You ran until your breath-shattered chest ready to burst. Its roar thundered in your ears. Suddenly it lunged, its shadow swallowing you whole. You screamed, then jolted awake, sweat pouring down your face. But what stunned you most was seeing others in the tribe waking at the same time, gasping faces pale with fear. They had dreamed of the same beast. The camp erupted in whispers. Everyone agreed the dream could not be coincidence. Some insisted the spirit of the beast had entered their dreams as a warning. Others claimed it was a sign of its return. The air thickened. No one dared dismiss it. Historians still argue whether collective dreams existed among early humans or whether they were only shared memories triggered by powerful images. But in that moment, everyone believed they had experienced something beyond reason. You bowed your head, recalling every detail of the dream, shivering at how precisely it matched the stories told the night before. You saw the colossal wings blotting the sky, the gaping mouth of jagged teeth, the earth-shaking roar. Others described the same vision, differing only in whether the beast flew or crawled over the mountain. The more you listened, the more the line between dream and reality dissolved. A child sobbed, clinging to their mother, saying the beast had swallowed them in the dream. The mother soothed them, though terror flickered in her own eyes. Another youth laughed nervously, claiming he had ridden the beast across the mountain peaks in his dream. The tribe laughed too, but their laughter trembled, uncertain whether it was truly a jest. You understood then these dreams had become new proof, strengthening belief in the beast's existence. No bones or claw marks were needed now. The collective dream alone was enough to plant unwavering conviction. In silence, you closed your eyes, wondering if dreams could truly carry memories from long ago, or were simply reflections of waking visions. Then the shaman rose, his voice booming. He declared that the beast had chosen to appear in dreams as a test of faith. He pointed to the glittering night sky, proclaiming that those who remained loyal would receive the beast's protection. At his words, the tribe bowed, as one chanting prayers into the wind as though the valley itself was answering. You stood still, eyes half closed, recalling the beast's shadow from your dream. Though frightened, you felt drawn in. It was not just a destroyer, it was a symbol of power beyond human limits. You trembled, yet felt compelled, as if the beast itself was calling you into legend. When dawn came, the dream still haunted everyone. All swore they would never forget the vision, that they would pass it on as undeniable proof. You knew then that dreams were no longer private, they had become part of collective memory. And so the legend of giant beasts grew another layer, no longer rooted only in stone or earth, but in the realm of human sleep. That evening, as the sun sank behind the mountains and painted the valley red, the tribe returned from hunting and discovered something strange at a mound near the forest's edge. Stacked stones stood there, but unlike before, these bore carvings of unfamiliar forms. You stepped closer, eyes widening. On the stone was a figure half human, half beast, a long toothy head atop a man's torso, an arm raised with what looked like a spear. The tribe stood stunned. A young woman whispered it was proof of beast gods, evidence that humans and monsters once mingled. A child clutched your hand, wide-eyed, trembling. Did they live with us? You had no answer, for your own mind churned with questions. The shaman approached, his eyes glittering in the twilight. He touched the carving, muttering strange words, then declared, "This is our divine ancestor, the one who bridges heaven and earth, man and beast." At once the tribe fell to their knees, some weeping. The carvings became sacred testimony, no longer mere scratches on stone. Historians still argue whether such symbols were born from fossil-inspired imagination or simply ritual art. But in that moment, belief outweighed reason. You traced the carvings with trembling fingers. There were humans with broad wings, beasts with long heads but cloaked in furs. The more you looked, the more the lines blurred between real and imagined, as though the tribe had woven a world where dinosaurs and humans lived together. You felt small, standing before a universe carved in stone. Suddenly a young man laughed, saying it must have been a prank carved to scare people. But a sudden gust swept through, snuffing out the fire. Darkness fell, and for an instant the carvings seemed to move. Panic spread, people screaming and clutching one another. The young man went pale, his laughter gone. You closed your eyes, imagination carrying you into the distant past. You saw humans standing alongside beasts, not in fear but in companionship, hunting together, resisting storms together. In that vision you saw awe and admiration woven into their bond. Perhaps that was why the ancestors transformed them into beast gods, so that fear became faith. A soft song rose from an elder, chanting of an age when beasts and humans were one. His voice was slow, steady, carrying on the wind, and the tribe listened in silence. You sat, eyes half shut, letting the song draw you in. In your mind, you too became part of the carvings, a human body with beast's eyes, wings stretched wide across the sky. As the moon rose, silver light gleamed off the carvings, making them shimmer as though alive. The tribe believed the beast gods truly watched over them. Offerings began to pile at the base, seeds, forest fruits, rare animal hides. The air thickened with solemnity, like a ceremony no one had planned. You looked up at the star-filled sky, realizing that from now on the half-human, half-beast figure would be etched into the tribe's memory. It was no longer just a mark on stone, it had become a symbol of a world where man and monster were bound together. And you knew the legend had taken another step forward. The imagined dinosaurs had now become gods, immortal in human belief. On a misty morning, the tribe packed their belongings, preparing for a long journey. Game had grown scarce in the region, the streams nearly dry. Everyone knew it was time to leave the familiar land in search of a new home. You walked among them, your steps heavy, yet your eyes constantly roving. Every tree trunk, every rocky ledge stirred memories of the monstrous traces that had haunted you for so many days. The migration path led the group through a barren valley, sheer cliffs, rising on either side. Suddenly, a cry came from up ahead. A child had discovered something strange, a massive bone jutting out of cracked earth. The people rushed forward, forgetting their weariness. The bone was pale white, thick as a fallen tree trunk, its surface etched with long, strange grooves. You touched it cold, seeped into your hand, sending a shiver down your spine. An elder declared this was the land's greeting, that the sacred beast had passed before them, leaving a sign to guide humankind. But some of the youths whispered that it was dangerous, that the monster might still be near. The air thickened heavy with both excitement and dread. Historians still debate whether the migrations of prehistoric humans exposed them to fossils enriching their imagination, or if it was only coincidence. But in this moment you saw clearly these journeys gave legend the chance to grow. You studied the bone closely, and in a rush you imagined the whole colossal creature. Taller than mountains, its steps thundered through valleys. The image took your breath, sweat beading despite the morning chill. When you spoke, many nodded, eyes shining with belief. The tales spread quickly through the group, each adding details from thunderous roars to blazing eyes. By nightfall, the people camped beside a dry riverbed. The firelight shone upon the bone placed at the circle's center. They sat around it as though around a god. A young man tapped it with a stick, its deep echo silencing the group. Then someone began to tell that the beast had drunk this river dry, leaving only the empty bed behind. Another added that it might return to claim the last trickles. Stories wove together endlessly, and soon the entire company felt they were living inside a tale rather than reality. You watched the firelight flicker across the bone's surface, revealing strange patterns unseen by day. In the wavering glow they looked like scales feeding the imagination. A mother whispered over her child that if the great beast's spirit was watching, may it protect the journey. The thought spread. Soon offerings appeared: nuts, berries, even scraps of precious dried meat. You realized then, in hardship, belief in the monster had become strength. It was no longer only fear, but a guardian spirit. Each step, each trace found along the way was taken as a message from another world. And you knew that from now on legend would no longer remain fixed to one place. It would travel with the people, spreading wherever they wandered. That night, as you lay to rest, you could not sleep. The image of the glowing bone haunted you. The faint trickle of the empty stream and the wind through the rocks sounded like whispers from an ancient being. You shivered, but strangely felt not only fear, there was also excitement. You and the tribe were stepping into a new chapter, where every trace would open a new legend. The sun rose high, flooding golden light across the hills. The people marched on chatting to ease the weariness. Yet something new had taken root. The tribe's language seemed to be growing richer. New words appeared to describe what they could not touch, the monstrous forms glimpsed only through bones, claw marks, or dreams. No longer did they say simply big bone or strange beast. Now one spoke of the long-necked one another, of the thunder roarer, another still of the sky shielder. Each new sound, each phrase expanded their vocabulary. Children listened, repeated, memorized as though playing. Adults used the words in stories, in warnings, planting vivid images of creatures no one had truly seen. At night, fire once again united imagination. A man rose and declared, "Today I saw the tracks of the long-necked beast. It stood as tall as mountains, feeding from treetops." The circle nodded in solemn agreement. Then another chimed in. "I heard the thunder roarer's cry rolling from the clouds, stronger than any tiger's roar." The story passed like fire, each person adding a word, a detail. You smiled, realizing that language was stretching alongside imagination. Once they could only gesture or mimic sounds. Now words themselves were tools making the unseen visible. Historians still argue whether early language arose from the needs of the hunt or from the need to retell imagined creatures. Strange though, it seems here you witnessed both at once. A child at your side asked, "Is the long-necked one still alive somewhere?" You hesitated, then answered with the new words, "Perhaps it walks in the distant forest we have never seen." The child's eyes widened. He giggled and hurried to repeat it to his friends. In moments, your words had become new seeds for imagination. In the fire's glow, someone began to sing, weaving the new words into verse. The song was simple, but each repetition made the giant beasts more vivid in everyone's minds. Words became scales, teeth claws assembling into form. You shivered, feeling the creature step out of the melody. An elder added softly, "The sky shielder could soar over seas, bringing rain to the fields." Another claimed the thunder roarer guarded volcanoes and its anger split the earth. Instantly these were stored in collective memory, not written but recited. Through language, the images would outlive the moment, carried across generations. You looked around at the firelight, glowing in every eye, shining with belief and excitement. Language had become not just a tool for communication, but a doorway into a parallel world where monsters lived with names, with traits, with roles in the cosmos. Once etched into speech, they could never vanish. As the fire died, people drifted into sleep, but the words still echoed in your mind. Long-necked one, thunder roarer, sky shielder. They repeated like incantations until you dreamed. And in the dream, the words summoned the beasts so vividly you stood among them, small yet filled with awe. You understood then legends would no longer be etched only on stone or painted on cave walls. They would live forever in words. Language had become the new home of the imagined beasts, ensuring they would endure alongside humankind. The wind roared across the steppe as you and the tribe gathered around a great fire in the open plain. After days of hard travel, they cast off their worries and sought joy. Laughter echoed, stories tumbled one after another, and through every word the image of the giant beasts returned. But this time they carried not only fear, they became the source of jokes and laughter that made even children and elders forget their hunger. A young man suddenly bent his back, planted his hands on the ground, and roared like a predator. He swung an imaginary tail, sweeping the children into fits of laughter. Another beat his chest, mimicking the thunder roarer's cry. The air shook with laughter and playful screams. The tribe forgot the terror that once made them weep. You saw the change clearly. Fear had transformed into a tool for play, for bonding. A child stomped around, mimicking heavy footsteps, sending the crowd into hysterics. Historians still question whether humor helped early communities master their fear of the unexplainable. But here you knew laughter turned imagined dinosaurs from destroyers into players in a shared performance. A burly man began a new story freshly invented. He said he had seen the long-necked beast trying to eat fruit from a tall tree, only to get its head stuck in the branches, thrashing helplessly. The listeners howled, some slapping the ground, tears in their eyes. Others added to the tale that they had freed the beast, and in return it promised never to trample the village. The laughter roared across the plain. You laughed too, but wonder stirred within. From a lifeless bone, from a haunting dream, the imagined dinosaur had now become a character of comedy. It could be clumsy, foolish, even a companion in imagination. The transformation showed how humans did more than fear. They turned fear into power for survival. A child beside you giggled, whispering, if it showed up, maybe it'd trip over its own tail. You burst out laughing, and soon the whole group joined in. In that instant, fear no longer weighed them down. It became the raw material of a richer imagination. Songs rose, no longer solemn but playful. They sang of the beast's stumbling tail caught in thorns, belching fire, only to set its own tail ablaze. Everyone clapped in rhythm, children danced in circles, roaring in silly voices. You looked around and saw no fear, only bright eyes glowing with joy. The traces that once horrified them had become comic tales. You thought perhaps humor was what allowed communities to endure, keeping them from being crushed by the incomprehensible. Scholars may argue, but here you understood laughter was humankind's greatest weapon. The fire flared highlight, dancing across radiant faces. You closed your eyes, and in your mind the monster appeared again. But instead of roaring in fury, it stumbled clumsily, shaking the forest in slapstick chaos. You chuckled softly, sighing with relief. From now on, when you remembered the imagined beast, you would recall not just fear, but the laughter that echoed across the plain tonight. At dawn, the first rays of light pierced the mist, spilling onto the open ground where the tribe had stopped to rest. You joined a few others in searching for food, crossing the marshy area near the river. There you stumbled upon a sight that froze everyone in their tracks. A giant crocodile basking on the muddy bank, its body long and sinuous scales glistening. With a violent thrash, it sent mud flying, sending children screaming as they bolted back toward their parents. You stood motionless, heart pounding. For a moment, the crocodile looked like a living remnant of ancient monsters. Its long snout bristled with sharp teeth flashing in the sunlight, its yellow eyes unblinking yet full of menace. A man whispered, "That must be the offspring of the primeval beast." The words weighed heavily on the air. Then, as you looked skyward, you saw a massive bird soaring overhead, its wingspan casting a shadow across the ground. Its harsh cry echoed through the valley, and everyone shivered. The same child who had just cried over the crocodile now pointed, shouting that it was the sky-shielded beast of the elders' tales. The group exchanged glances, torn between doubt and belief. Fragments of nature and imagination suddenly fused together, as if proving the stories had never been mere fantasy. You bent down to study the tracks left in the mud. They were wide and deep crocodile prints, but in the eyes of the people they were the footprints of a monster. Children crowded around, pressing their tiny feet into the depressions, squealing with both delight and fear. The adults murmured, recalling the great skeletons found in the mountains, comparing them to the giant bird above. Historians still debate whether observing living animals influenced how early humans imagined dinosaurs. But you saw it clearly: the human mind always blends the real and the imagined to create something greater. An old man told how as a boy he had seen a crocodile so large it swallowed an entire bison. Some gasped, some laughed nervously. Another insisted this crocodile was the last descendant of the ancient beast. That belief spread quickly, no one daring to take their eyes off the animal as it slipped into the water. When it vanished beneath the rippling surface, everyone held their breath, half expecting the monster to surge back from the depths. You inhaled, deeply torn between terror and wonder, as if touching the line between present and past. The bird's cry echoed above, mingling with the lapping water into a mysterious chorus. You knew from this moment forward the tale of the beast would no longer be told only through fossils or dreams. It would also be tied to the living creatures around you. That night, around the fire, the day's events were retold. A child mimicked the bird's hoarse cry, making the group laugh. Another imitated the crocodile's lumbering crawl, filling the circle with both unease and amusement. Yet behind the laughter, every eye sparkled as though they had been shown proof that legend and reality could intertwine. Lying down beneath the star-filled sky, you still heard echoes of the bird's call and the water against the shore. In your dream, the crocodile transformed into a colossal monster, its tail lashing waves into a frenzy. The bird became a shadow that covered the heavens, its eyes burning like twin flames. You awoke gasping, shaken yet strangely certain the beasts had never vanished. They still lived on in other forms all around you. By late afternoon, the sun blazed red across the hillside, making the rocks glow like embers. While foraging for firewood with others, you stopped short before a newly collapsed pit left by heavy rain. Inside lay piles of massive white bones. They were nothing like the game animals you hunted, but long and huge, so large that 3 men could not wrap their arms around one. Silence fell, broken only by the hammering of your heart. An elder whispered that these were the bones of a monster that had slept for thousands of moons. A youth objected, claiming they were only stones shaped like bones. Yet when the sunset struck them, the bones gleamed like ivory and doubt dissolved. You reached out and touched one, the chill cut into your skin. In your mind, a giant beast rose alive once more, towering higher than hills, its neck stretching toward the sky. The others crowded, close eyes wide with terror and awe. Children clung to their mothers, trembling at the pit's edge. A woman burst into tears, begging the spirit not to be angered. Another knelt and placed a small stone beside the bones as an offering. Without a word of agreement, the whole group bowed the air heavy, with reverence and dread. You realized this was not the tribe's first discovery of huge bones, but it felt different. These had been buried for so long, forgotten now, revealed as if by an unseen hand. Historians still argue whether floods and landslides gave early people their chance to unearth fossils sparking monster legends. But watching this, you knew the shifting earth was the most powerful fuel for collective imagination. A bold youth leapt into the pit, eager to dig more. When he struck a bone, the hollow thud echoed deep and low, sending a shiver through everyone. The sound seemed to rise from the earth's belly. The youth scrambled out, pale-faced. Someone shouted that the beast still lived, only sleeping. Panic spread, some fled, others fell to their knees in prayer. You sank to the ground, eyes fixed on the bones. In that instant, the last rays of daylight struck the pit, setting the skeleton aglow like burning coal. The image seared itself into your memory, a giant frame shining as though the beast was stirring awake. Cold sweat traced your spine, your heart racing. By night, the story of the bone pit rippled through the tribe. Elders declared it a sign of the god's return. Youths added that the monster had chosen this place to leave its message. A child invented that it had heard groans in its dream, surely from the pit itself. Each retelling fed the legend layer upon layer. Looking around, you saw firelight reflected in every eye. No one viewed the bones as mere remains anymore. They had become proof of something beyond human reach. You knew that generations later, when the earth covered them again and another landslide revealed them, the tale would change, once more wrapped in fresh myth. Each rediscovery would make the legend grow, stretching endlessly through time. You raised your gaze to the night sky, stars spread thick like countless watching eyes. You felt the line between real and imagined was as thin as smoke. One glimpse was enough for the human mind to record it, forever passed down in words, in offerings, in fear and reverence alike. And in that moment you understood the imagined dinosaurs would never fade. Every upheaval of the earth would call them forth again. The migration led the tribe onward into new land. Before you spread a wide, barren steppe grass rising waist-high, whispering in the wind. Suddenly the leader halted, hand raised. Ahead in a patch where the grass had been swept flat, strange bones jutted from the earth. They were not tiger or elephant, but long and curved like upright pillars. The group clustered, voices buzzing. An elder cried that these were the remains of the earth dragon, the creature sung of in ancient chants. Immediately many agreed, eyes alight, as though they had found proof of ancestral lore. A young woman insisted it was not the earth dragon, but the wings of the thunderbird carved in cave walls they had once seen. You knelt, brushing dirt from the bones. They were slick, cold and solid beneath your palm, quickening your pulse. Old visions returned, the long-necked beast, the thunder roarer's cry, the black wings. Now they fused into one, a monster shaped like a dragon, with wide bird-like wings and the long body of the earth beast. Historians still debate whether the mingling of migrating cultures transformed dinosaur myths into dragons, thunder beasts, or hybrid deities. But here you saw the transformation unfolding before your eyes. An eager youth declared that when he slept near the bones, he dreamed of the beast flying through clouds, its mouth breathing thunder and lightning. A child chimed in that it had ridden on its back in a dream, soaring over mountains to see the sea. Stories piled atop stories, no one stopping them, for each word made the monster grander. The elders decided to build a ring of stones around the bones, sanctifying the site. The people sang the old chant, but this time with new words. They named it Thunder Dragon. The song rose over the steppe, carried by the howling wind. Standing within the circle, your skin prickled as though vast wings truly beat above you. By night, fire blazed around the stone ring. Smoke curled skyward in twisting shapes. For a heartbeat, you thought you saw a dragon's body writhe in the smoke, its eyes glowing like stars. Children shrieked with delight, while the adults sat frozen, fearful yet entranced. Some collapsed to their knees, praying for protection. The air brimmed with sacred terror. You watched the firelight glint on the bones, glowing as though molten. In your mind's eye, the beast roared mouth, spewing thundertail, sweeping dust into storms. The vision was so vivid you gasped for breath. Yet when you blinked, only the silent skeleton remained. Arguments broke out. Some swore it was a dragon, others said a divine bird, still others claimed it was the ancestral earth beast. But instead of division, they agreed all names were true, that each spoke of a force greater than mankind. The merging of beliefs turned the imagined creature into a new symbol, dragon, bird, and beast, all at once. You sat down by the stone circle, the echoes of roars and wing beats in your head. You knew that after this migration, the story would spread farther, reaching other tribes. And there the monster would change again, taking new forms: dragon, thunder beast, divine bird, monstrous bird. In the darkness, you smiled. It was change itself that made legend immortal. No single form could ever contain human imagination. And you understood the beast you now heard in stories was no longer just a creature. It had become the eternal symbol of cultural exchange and collective memory. That night the fire still burned, but no one sang, no one laughed. The entire tribe sank into an uncanny silence. Ever since seeing those massive bones and naming them in countless forms, the obsession had only grown heavier. You sat close to the fire, your eyes drifting now and then to the pitch dark beyond. Inside you a question echoed: were all the things you had seen and heard only imagination, or had there truly been a colossal creature walking this earth? A young man, usually fearless, suddenly spoke. His voice wavered, yet was clear. If it never existed, then why do we see bones, see claw marks, and share the same dream? His question tightened the air. Some nodded in agreement, others shook their heads, saying perhaps it was only stones shaped like bones, only clouds casting shadows, only minds making things up. The elder replied slowly, "There are things you see with your eyes that are not truth. And there are things unseen that still exist." His words hushed the group, leaving them suspended between belief and doubt. Historians still debate whether there were individuals who first dared to question myths, planting the seed of critical thought. You looked around and knew doubt had indeed been born tonight. You closed your eyes, recalling the scenes in the cave, the dreams, the giant crocodile by the river. Each detail was vivid, yet when woven together they did not quite align. You began to think perhaps the human mind had unconsciously stitched them, bones to claw marks, thunder to shadows, until the monster was formed. The thought made you shiver, not from fear, but from the glimmer of another truth. A woman rose, trembling but firm. "If it isn't real, then why do I feel it watching me each night? If it isn't real, then why do I hear its roar in my dreams?" Her words broke many into tears. They clung to one another, overwhelmed by belief. That belief was so powerful it drowned out every argument. You realized the debate would never end. One side trusted in signs and spirits, the other dared to question. And in the middle you felt torn, pulled both ways. Imagination made you want to believe, yet fragile reason whispered that perhaps it was all illusion. That night the fire dwindled, smoke rising. In the smoke you saw a familiar shape. The long neck, the sweeping tail, the glowing eyes. You knew it was only an illusion, yet the image stood out with eerie clarity. You whispered to yourself, did it really never exist? The wind through the cliffs answered with a sound half roar, half sigh. A child beside you looked up and asked, "If it isn't real, why do we all dream of it?" You were speechless. In those innocent eyes you saw both naivety and the deep yearning to believe. And you understood sometimes the answer matters less than the belief people choose to hold. With the first light of dawn, the argument faded. No one won, no one lost. Some still believed the beast was divine, others clung to doubt. But one thing was clear: the collision of faith and skepticism only made the myth richer. Deep down, the legend lived on, real or not, rooted in the memory of the whole community. Night returned the black sky, brimming with countless stars. The tribe had weathered many seasons, many mountains and valleys, and now once more they gathered around the fire as if it were life itself. You looked at their familiar faces marked by time, yet in their eyes still glowed the same fervor when the beast was spoken of. A young man, voice trembling with excitement, told of a giant stone he had seen today jutting from the barren ground. Its curve reminded him of a creature's spine, as though a beast slept beneath the earth. Another jumped in, saying he had seen the imprint of vast wings in the sand after the wind swept it bare. Murmurs spread wonder, filling every voice. You sat silently listening. In your mind rose every discovery, before footprints in the mud, skeletons in the cliffs, drawings in caves, the haunting collective dream, all fused into a single chain. And you realized through generations, each detail added, each memory layered, had grown the myth. Historians still argue whether humans invented dinosaurs from scattered fragments, or whether they were simply trying to find meaning in a vast world. For you, the answer no longer mattered. A child asked softly, "So, were they real or not?" The question stilled the circle. Elders looked at one another, none giving a clear answer. Then a woman smiled, gently placed her hand on the child's shoulder and said, "If they live in our memory, then they have existed in their own way." Her words warmed the circle, dissolving the weight of silence. You felt peace. Perhaps the great beasts never truly walked beside humans. But through imagination they had lived, roared and flown in the minds of generations. They were mirrors of fear, faith and even humour. And as you sat there listening to laughter mingling with prayers, you knew they would endure, not in stone or bone, but in the stories told tonight. The fire's glow lit up every face, sparkling eyes alive with wonder. You closed your own, surrendering to imagination. Behind your lids, a giant beast walked slowly. It did not roar, did not attack, only watched you silently, then turned and vanished into the night. You smiled, knowing you had touched the final threshold between dream and reality, between legend and truth. The fire had burned low, leaving scattered embers glowing like tiny eyes. The night wind whispered not with howls, but with a lullaby's hush. You listened to the steady breathing of those asleep around you, feeling your heart calm, wrapped in darkness like a soft blanket. The image of the beast faded, not fierce, not blazing, only a distant shadow dissolving into mist. It walked away slowly, leaving only faint ripples in imagination. You felt yourself sinking into that same twilight realm where the story melted into your heartbeat, no longer sharp, but gentle, wandering like a stream. You knew that tomorrow the tale would be told again in a different voice with new details. But for now you let sleep carry you, as though the beast itself were lulling you into peace. Everything blurred, the breeze across your skin, the fading stars and the final whisper. It was only a dream, but a dream so beautiful no one ever wished to leave. The end. Good night.